Imagine the world 3,000 years ago. It isn't a world of savages or cavemen. It is a world remarkably like our own. It is a world of international trade. Ships are sailing from Egypt to Greece, carrying glass, ivory, and tin. Kings are writing letters to each other on clay tablets, addressing one another as brother. There are treaties. There are marriages. There is a complex global economy that stretches from the mountains of Turkey to the deserts of Egypt. It was the late Bronze Age. It was a golden era of humanity. The people living in these great cities in Mycenae and Hattusa in Ugarit believed that their civilization was permanent. They had massive walls. They had powerful armies. They had gods who protected them. They believed their world would last forever, but it didn't. In the span of a single human lifetime, barely 40 years, it was all gone. Every major city from Greece to Gaza was burned to the ground. The trade route stopped. The writing stopped. The art stopped. The lights went out, and humanity was plunged into a dark age that would last for centuries. It is the greatest murder mystery in history. Who killed the Bronze Age? Was it an earthquake? Was it a plague? Or was it the mysterious group of invaders who appeared on the horizon? A group that history has named the Sea Peoples. We are going to walk through the ashes of these cities tonight to find the answer. But before we start the journey, I have a small request. This channel is a labor of love. We are a small team trying to keep these forgotten stories alive. And we are trying to build a place where you can relax, learn, and escape the noise of the modern world. The only currency that matters here is your attention. If you want to help this channel survive and reach a wider audience, the best thing you can do is hit that subscribe button. It is a small click for you, but it allows us to keep the fire burning until the next story. Thank you for being part of this. Now let's go back to the year 1177 BC. To understand the collapse, we first have to fall in love with what was lost. The late Bronze Age was a time of globalism. In Egypt, the great Pharaoh Ramses II was building monuments that touched the sky. To the north, in what is now Turkey, the Hittite Empire controlled a massive army of iron chariots. To the west, the Mycenaeans, the heroes of the Trojan War, ruled Greece from their citadels. But they weren't isolated. They were a family. We have found letters, clay tablets, sent between these kings. They sound surprisingly modern. A Hittite queen writing to the Queen of Egypt, asking about her health. A king in Babylon complaining that his brother in Egypt sent him gold that wasn't pure enough. But the most important thing wasn't the letters. It was the metal. This was the Bronze Age. And to make bronze, you need two things: copper and tin. Copper was easy to find. It came from Cyprus. But tin was rare. It had to be imported from thousands of miles away, possibly as far as Afghanistan or Britain. This meant that no single nation could survive on its own. The Hittites needed the Egyptians. The Mycenaeans needed the Canaanites. They were locked together in a spider's web of dependency. As long as the ships kept sailing, everyone was rich. Everyone was safe. But a spider's web is fragile. If you cut just one thread, the whole thing begins to unravel. The end didn't begin with an invasion. It began with the weather. Around 1200 BC, something shifted in the climate. The rain stopped coming. Scientists examining ancient pollen samples from the bottom of lakes in Syria and Israel have found proof of a mega drought. This wasn't just a dry summer. This was a climate shift that lasted for decades. In a world dependent on farming, drought means famine, and famine means instability. We found a desperate letter sent from the Hittite king to the Pharaoh of Egypt. It doesn't talk about gold or glory. It says simply, "There's famine in my house. My people are dying. Send grain or we perish." Egypt, which had the Nile River, sent the food. They tried to save their neighbors, but the threads were already snapping. Then, the earth turned against them. Geologists call it an earthquake storm. It's a rare phenomenon where one massive earthquake triggers a chain reaction along a fault line over several years. Between 1225 and 1175 BC, the major cities of the Mediterranean were hammered by seismic activity. Walls cracked, palaces collapsed. The economy, already weakened by hunger, was now broken by disaster. Imagine the psychological toll. You are starving. Your children are crying. The ground beneath your feet is shaking. You look to your king for help, but his palace is in ruins. You look to the priests, but their prayers aren't bringing the rain. The people began to panic. They began to move. Refugees flooded the roads, looking for food, looking for safety. We don't know what they called themselves. The Egyptians called them the Shurden, the Shikalesh, the Peleset. History simply calls them the Sea Peoples. They were a confederation of tribes heavily armed, moving not just as an army, but as a migration. They brought their wives, their children, and their household goods in ox carts. They weren't just raiding. They were moving in, and they were unstoppable. They swept down the coast of the Mediterranean like a wildfire. They didn't just defeat armies, they erased civilizations. The most chilling evidence we have comes from the city of Ugarit, a wealthy trading hub in modern-day Syria. Archaeologists found a tablet there, baking in the ruins of a kiln. It was written by the king of Ugarit to his neighbor on Cyprus. It was never sent. It was likely written in the final hours before the city fell. Listen to the desperation in his voice. "My father, behold, the enemy's ships came here. My cities were burned, and they did evil things in my country. Does not my father know that all my troops and chariots are in the land of Hutti, and all my ships are in the land of Lukka? Thus, the country is abandoned to itself. May my father know it. The 7 ships of the enemy that came here inflicted much damage upon us. The country is abandoned to itself." He was begging for help, but there was no one left to answer. When archaeologists dug up Ugarit, they found arrowheads stuck in the walls. They found a layer of ash several feet thick. The city was burned so thoroughly that it was never inhabited again. The Sea Peoples didn't just conquer Ugarit. They deleted it, and then they turned their ships south, toward the last superpower left standing. They turned toward Egypt. The country is abandoned to itself. He was begging for help, but there was no one left to answer. When archaeologists dug up Ugarit, they found arrowheads stuck in the walls. They found a layer of ash several feet thick. The city was burned so thoroughly that it was never inhabited again. The Sea Peoples didn't just conquer Ugarit. They deleted it, and then they turned their ships south, toward the last superpower left standing. They turned toward Egypt. Ramses III did something brilliant. He knew he couldn't beat them on the open ocean. His ships weren't strong enough, so he lured them in. He allowed the Sea Peoples fleet to enter the Nile Delta, where the water was shallow and narrow, and then he sprung the trap. Egyptian archers lined the riverbanks, raining thousands of arrows down onto the crowded enemy ships. Egyptian soldiers used grappling hooks to capsize the boats, dragging the invaders into the water where they drowned in their heavy armor. It was a massacre. Ramses III carved the story of his victory onto the walls of his temple at Medinet Habu. He wrote, "Those who reach my boundary Their seed is not. Their hearts and their souls are finished for all eternity. Egypt had won. The invasion was stopped, but it was a hollow victory. The war had drained the treasury. The trade routes were still broken. The famine was still raging. Even though Egypt survived battle, it never really recovered. The spider's web was gone. The great pharaohs began to lose their grip. Within a few decades, Egypt, the greatest empire the world had ever known, slowly began to crumble from inside. They had defeated the sea peoples, but they couldn't defeat the collapse. This is the part of the story that frightens historians the most. It wasn't just that people died. It was that knowledge died. When the palaces burned, the scribes disappeared. In Greece, the writing system known as Linear B simply vanished. It wasn't just that they stopped writing new books. The entire ability to read and write was forgotten for nearly 400 years. Imagine that. Imagine a world where your grandfather knew how to read poetry, but you don't even know how to write your own name. The complex skills of the Bronze Age architecture, engineering, international diplomacy were lost. Pottery became simpler. Art became crude. People stopped living in the great cities on the plains and moved to small, fortified villages on the tops of mountains. They were afraid. They were isolated. The global economy had reverted to survival mode. The tin stopped flowing, so the bronze stopped being made. Humanity actually had to scramble to find a new metal to use, eventually stumbling into the Iron Age, not because it was better, but because they had no choice. The light of civilization had flickered out, and the Mediterranean entered a dark age that would last until the rise of classical Greece centuries later. So who killed the Bronze Age? For a long time, historians wanted a simple answer. They wanted to blame the Sea Peoples. It's a compelling story. Barbarians at the gate, destroying the civilized world. But the truth is much more frightening. The Sea Peoples didn't cause the collapse. They were a symptom of it. They were refugees, likely fleeing their own famines and disasters in the north. They were desperate people looking for food, just like everyone else. The Bronze Age collapse was a systems failure. It was the perfect storm. The drought weakened the food supply. The earthquakes weakened the cities. The famine caused migration. The migration caused war. And the war broke the trade routes. Because the societies were so interconnected. When one fell, they all fell. They were too big, too complex, and too dependent on each other to survive the shock. They weren't destroyed by a single enemy. They were destroyed by their own fragility. It is hard to look at the late Bronze Age and not see a reflection of ourselves. We also live in a world of global trade, complex supply chains, and international reliance. We are more connected today than they ever were. We like to think that our civilization is permanent, that our technology will save us, that the lights will never go out. But the ruins of Hattusa and Ugarit are still there, buried under the sand, whispering a warning to us across 3,000 years. Nothing lasts forever, and the more complex a system becomes, the easier it is to break. Civilization is not a guarantee. It is a fragile thing that has to be protected, nurtured, and sometimes rebuilt from the ashes. The Bronze Age collapse left the world in darkness for centuries. But in that darkness, some secrets were buried so deep that we are still afraid to uncover them today. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, please subscribe and turn on notifications. It helps us keep these stories alive. Next time, we're traveling to China to stand before the tomb of the first emperor. It is a massive underground city protected by rivers of flowing mercury and rigged with mechanical traps. Archaeologists know exactly where it is, but they refuse to open it. What are they afraid of finding? Join us next time to find out.